I'm excited to introduce you to our guests. First is Richard Reyes Gavilan. He is the Executive Director of the DC Public Libraries. Rich came to DC in 2014 and has previously worked for the New York and Brooklyn Public Libraries. Today, he's going to share about DC's marquee Martin Luther King Jr. Library, which recently reopened. Rich and his team have also been aggressively building and renovating libraries all over Washington, DC in recent years. And Rich, I can't wait to come enjoy the reading room and have lunch on the new terrace. So congratulations on the opening. Also, Rebecca Roberts is with us today. She is the curator of programming for Planet Word. And this interesting woman is something that we all will enjoy, that we all will enjoy knowing. Rebecca has been a journalist, a tour guide, a forensic anthropologist, an event planner, a political consultant, a jazz singer, and more. Now, she has her talents invested in Planet Word and will share how the team there is working to open an institution that will be part of the intellectual and cultural life of our city. By now, you guys are all experts in the chat function. Please use it to send in your questions for Rich and Rebecca today. And I want to make sure that that I thank Emily Vecchione, our member event producer who put together today's program. You won't see her, but she is behind the scenes making all of this happen. So I thank Emily very much. And with that, I turn this over to Elliot Ferguson. Elliot, thanks so much.
Thank you, Claire, and good afternoon to everyone. It's so good to see the names and some faces of our stakeholders that are here in Washington, D.C., and to have a conversation about some good news, which is, of course, things opening in Washington, something that we all are excited about in a year that's been challenging in so many ways that I don't even have to tell you because we're still living it. You know, let's just face it, to have a new memorial that is open in the city, if you haven't gone to the new Eisenhower Memorial on Independence Avenue, you owe it to yourself just to get out and on a day like today, after this, that is, to go out and check it out. It's really great to see that it has opened in the city. You all know that there are new hotels that have opened around the city, which is always good news. I'm saying not hotels that are reopening that have shut down because of COVID, but hotels that are new to the city, and to still see all of the action with cranes and things that are happening in Washington as a whole. We're always excited when things are opening in the city, and of course we have new attractions such as the new Black Lives Matter Plaza, which is now a part of the way in which we sell the city. And I'm sure Rich will share with you some of the ways in which that is spoken about in the new Mlk Library, which just reopened. So as Claire has referenced, we have two amazing speakers. One, Rich, that is from the New York area, that has moved to Washington and brought his talents here. And Rebecca, that is from the beautiful city of Bethesda. As I said to her, if you're out of the area, you can say you're from DC, but if you're in the area, you gotta say you're from Bethesda. But we're always excited to have both of them here, and of course the new museum, or the renovated museum, and the new museum that has opened in Washington, DC, Planet Word. So one building dates back to 1869, and the other building dates back to way back to 1972. For some of us, I remember that year, and others of you, you might need a little reminding as to what was going on. So I'm gonna start with Rich and allow him to share with us some amazing slides that reference some of the things that we can look forward to in the new Dr. Martin Luther King Library.
Great, thanks, Elliot. And hi, Rebecca. I guess the first thing we're going to do is show you a few slides, maybe renderings of the MLK Library. I'll tell you that the renderings are faithful to what is actually there right now. We opened a couple of weeks ago, but for the time being, the building is still largely closed to the public. It is open now for basic transactional services. You come into the first floor to pick up a book and leave, or use a computer, but the great spaces are still hidden. We'll show you some pictures here, and thanks whoever's running this deck. We're just showing some slides of the new, our new cafe. We are set to announce our new cafe catering partner in the next couple of weeks with an outdoor garden along 9th Street. This used to be actually an exit ramp onto 9th Street, a really, really horrible view down 9th Street is now this really great garden. One of the most exciting features, probably the most exciting feature of the renovated MLK Library, is the monumental staircases. So we've got these two staircases that really help us achieve this idea of a journey of learning, where we want to make the building as interesting and as intriguing as possible. And so you see that dramatic, you've got the three skylights that are just begging you to come upstairs and explore everything that the building has within its 400,000 square feet. I credit former Mayor Tony Williams for imploring us to consider having an actual grand reading room in this renovated Mies van der Rohe building. And the way we achieved that was by cutting a 2,000 square foot hole between the third and fourth floor to achieve this really phenomenal double height space. And the artwork that you see on this slide is a site-specific installation by an artist named Zenobia Bailey, who created something very much inspired by MLK with a background of the March on Washington. Something that we were really lacking in the old building was a true auditorium. So we were able to design a 300 square foot auditorium on the library's fourth and new fifth floor. This is a column-free space, incredibly comfortable, just strikingly beautiful, and we cannot wait to activate it with programs, lectures, movies, author talks, music, and anything else that we can possibly think of. Books, yes, we'll have books. I always forget to talk about those. But yes, I think maybe 250,000 books to start with. We've got a phenomenal children's room, very playful, very delightful, really the opposite of what was in that old MLK library, kind of dreary. And nothing says delight more than a new children's slide. So we were able to really embody this idea of a playground for the imagination. So we created this slide, we built this slide, and it is, it's a real trip. It is a lot faster than I thought that, that it would be. So get your waiver signed before you go down it. Finally, and this picture doesn't do it justice, we've got a whole area for supporting the needs of the creative community. So a fabrication lab where you'll be able to do everything from borrow tools to enjoy the use of a dance studio, to use a recording studio for blogging, to using our new memory lab, which is a personal digital archiving station. We've thrown really everything at the kitchen sink down in the lower level of the new library to support the needs of DC's sort of creative economy. And lots of meeting spaces. We know that there are so many affinity groups and study groups and work groups, and we wanted to accommodate that as much as humanly possible. And I guess this is probably close to the last slide. We wanted to absolutely have a spectacular space in the new building for private events. And here's a great image of our new event space looking out onto our rooftop terrace, which is itself looking over the corners of 9th and G Street. And there are some more pictures of the same thing. Lots and lots of rooftop images. We've got a conference center. These are 5 or 6 rooms that can fit anywhere from 50 to 70 people. Again, great for all the affinity groups that meet in DC, whether you're an ANC or you know, a group of people who want to talk about their affinity for butterflies or everything in between. That is the MLK Library in about 3 minutes or less.
You know, Rich, thank you very much for sharing those slides with us. And the thing that, the 2 words that always resonate positively or negatively with people are the words museum and library, especially when we do what we do from a global perspective, because you're either excited about a museum or you're thinking that it's going to be an experience that might not be as exciting. And the same with the library. It was a place we went to learn, and I remember as a kid going to the library because none of the stuff that exists today was out there. But this is not the library that I grew up with. And I am so excited about what you all have done with this space. And it would be great if you'd share with them some of the things that they can do, or individuals on here without a library card, which by the way, I got one yesterday when I did a tour, can actually do by coming in there. And I'm gonna tease it by saying passport, for example.
Yeah, so, and you'll have to just, cut me off, Elliot, whenever you feel it's necessary.
All right.
You know, ultimately what we wanted to do was not just renovate a library. We wanted to create this 400,000 square foot, destination for learning, for culture, for city services. Basically, I like to call it a city within a city that includes a whole concept of a main street where you can get a lot of things done in one place. So we introduced this concept of community alliances, where we are going to have anywhere from 6 to 9 city agencies or not-for-profit partners taking up quasi-permanent residence on the second floor of the new library, anchored by our passport acceptance facility. But there will be other departments. So you'll be able to come in and visit. For example, you'll be able to visit the DC Health Exchange and sign up for health insurance. Next door to the Health Exchange, you might visit the Department of Employment Services, might have a one-stop where you can get job placement. So multiply that out by 3, 4, or 5, or 6 people, and all of these spaces will be co-locating on the second floor of the MLK Library, leveraging our beautiful new building and our incredibly accessible building. One of the great things about the MLK Library is that it is on every single subway line without having to transfer. So you can get to the MLK Library from all over, not just DC, but the region via mass transit in probably less than 30 minutes. And a lot of our partner agencies struggle with finding spaces where they can interact with the public in a really sort of convenient setting. And what a better place than in a modernized MLK Library for these types of services.
No, I totally agree. I love the fact that in addition to reading, be it a physical book or or all the other options for books today, that I could physically go in there and get a passport picture taken, so you don't have to come in with a passport picture and then go through the process. It's from soup to nuts. I can do 3D printing. I can have lunch on the terrace. I can actually purchase lunch there. And it's so interactive. There's a kids room. We stopped in the kids room and I saw an Amelia Bedelia book, and I immediately picked it up, and I felt like I was back in my childhood reading that book. And it was just an amazing experience. So kudos to you. I know that Miles van der Rohe probably thought in 1972, what a magnificent building. You turned, but I won't use the word ugly duckling, but you turned a building that was not so appealing into a building that we're all really proud of.
Thanks, Elliot. I'm chuckling because Mies was dead in 1972 when the building opened.
Oh, good.
He would probably have been kind of shocked at at the building that opened versus the building that he designed when you consider the amount of sort of value engineering that went into the building in order to get it constructed. So a lot of the buff yellow brick that you see in the MLK Library was originally supposed to be some of Mies's sort of signature dark green marble that you might see at the Seagram building or in many of his buildings in Chicago or at the Barcelona Pavilion. So so he would have been shocked in 1972 had he made it to the opening. But he certainly would be shocked at what that building has become, about 50 years later.
Absolutely. Well, we're extremely proud and happy to have the library / event venue / meeting space / in the heart of downtown. And thanks, Rich, for that overview. And Rebecca, now your building is 151 years old. And, let's just face it, for the last 12 years, I believe, it's been boarded up. On the outside looking in, it's still a beautiful building, but from all accounts on the inside, it was probably not as appealing. And
it was unloved. Yes.
Yes, we're using all the nice phrases. So you've had some time over the last few months to bring it to where it is today, and in 7 days you'll be able to expose the world to Planet Word. So show us your new museum.
Yeah. So we open a week from tomorrow. The 22nd, and I am happy to answer questions about how people reserve passes and all of that, but we are releasing, it's a free museum, it will always be a free museum. We are asking people to reserve a time ticket for capacity reasons, and The tickets for this coming weekend and the following weekend have all been reserved already. I'm delighted to tell you, but we're going to release 2 weeks in advance going forward. So they'll continue to be available. So I think you probably all have walked by this building a million times and maybe wondered what it was. It is a historic DC schoolhouse on the corner of 13th and K. And it was designed by Adolf Klus, so the same architect as Arts and Industries and Eastern Market and the Sumner School a few blocks away. But over the years, it was a school, it was DCPS offices, it was a homeless shelter, and then most recently it has been abandoned. So there's been a huge amount of work to get the building back to its former beauty and then install the exhibits and then get ready for visitors. So there are 10 galleries that will be ready for opening day. And I'm only going to show you a couple of them because I want to keep some surprises left in store. So the different, oh, my pictures went away. When Emily is able to share that again, I hope I'll show you some pictures. But the premise is that we, first of all, we moved the entrance around to K Street, because if you saw from that facade of the building, the historic doors on 13th Street have stairs. So the entrance is on K Street, which is at grade, and you enter through this little courtyard between the Franklin School and the Pension Building next door. And the first thing you see is this sculptural speaking willow, which is this kind of amazing thing. Each of those little white cups is a speaker, and they all speak different languages, and they're motion activated. So as you walk under them, you hear different languages. And then you go inside and you go up to the 3rd floor. Emily, if we can see the next slide. And all of the exhibits on the 3rd floor are sort of about how humans acquire language and how words enter the language and how languages vary around the globe. This is the word wall. It's a 40-foot wall of 1,000 words, and this is it lit up in white. This is actually its least interesting incarnation. If we go to the next slide, this word wall actually has a whole experience projected on it. And you learn about words and how they enter English. Those are microphones in front. It's a voice-activated experience. All museums voice-activated. And I think the next 2 slides are also images of the word wall lit up in beautiful ways. Yeah, right. And then all the rest of the exhibits are super cool stuff you can do with words. So there's a joke-telling gallery and a songwriting gallery and a speech-making gallery. In this room, and Emily, I don't know if you can hit play on this video. So watch this. What's happening here is she dips her paintbrush in an adjective. At this point, she's chosen hibernal, which means wintry. And when she paints the scene, the whole thing becomes hibernal. That is our exhibit content manager, Emily Greff. And then if we go to the next picture, you can see that more than one person can participate in this experience at a time, and they can be painting with different adjectives. And the scene changes just for the section you've painted. So that creepy creature flying across about 1/3 from the left is an airplane when you paint with most of the adjectives, but if you are painting with surreal, when the airplane hits surreal, it becomes that crazy dragon thing. If you paint with magical, when the airplane hits magical, it becomes a magic carpet. And the other gallery I'm going to show you is we do have a library. We are all about exploring all kinds of ways you can use words, not just reading, but we do have this sort of spectacular library. There are 3 experiences in here. Our library is magic rich. So one of these bookshelves is not a bookshelf, it's a secret door that leads to a poetry nook. Those gold frames around the edge are voice-activated dioramas of very well-known books, all done by local, interesting, different artists that light up when you speak to them. And then the books, you can see, I think in this image, you can see the Lorax and a couple of others. When you pull those off the shelf and open them on a table in the center of the room, if we look at the final slide, the story comes to life in front of you. And so those books, there are children's books, adult books, fiction, nonfiction, things written recently, things written a long time ago. And so for something that might be a storybook, like A Snowy Day is in there, you kind of learn the story. But for something that's a little bit more complicated, like A Wrinkle in Time is in there, and what animates there is the voice of an astrophysicist talking about how she was inspired to go into science because of that book. So that is all I'm going to let you see for now. You have to come to the museum to see the rest of it. And we can't wait to open our doors.
Well, Rebecca, we cannot wait to come, and I won't be the first in the door, but I will be in there probably within the next week or so, because I'd love to see what you all are bringing to life in the museum. I am kind of curious, as you've taken on this new role, and Claire referenced all the different career paths that you've had, what's the one thing that has surprised you or that you've learned the most as you've worked towards opening the Planet Word Museum?
So we initially thought we'd open in May. Obviously that didn't happen, and we got lucky in some sense. We hadn't really publicized the May opening very much, and we hadn't staffed up, so we didn't have to furlough people. But that meant that throughout the summer we were all doing 100 jobs, and it's really startup land. You know, even though this is this big imposing building and museum sounds so important, we're really more like a scrappy.com than anything else right now. So the number of new skills I have acquired, often on the fly, often while I'm doing them, is astounding. But you know, in some ways, that resume that Claire read is so broad and strange, and I could be accused of being something of a dilettante, but they all actually have led to this job, right? I mean, I get the chance to help open a museum about something I'm passionate about in a historic building in my hometown. Like, who gets to do that, you know? So it's a real privilege. And the fact that now I know how to get a giant bow wrapped around a building for a ribbon cutting, you know, that's just a skill I'm gonna add.
That's pretty cool. I can't wait to see you do that. So looking forward to it. So, you know, there's an interesting juxtaposition between the history of both. With Planet Word, the original, I believe it was the first high school in Washington, D.C., opened in 1869, just a few years after the abolition of slavery. And the Mlk Library opened to memorialize the accomplishments, and I believe the first library in the United States dedicated to Dr. King and all that he did during the Civil Rights Movement, and 6 years after he was assassinated. You know, both deal with words, both deal with something that we all focus on, communication on a regular basis. And then when you think about that history, and then you tie it into 2020, and everything from the Black Lives Matter movement to all the hyperbole from the administration in which we in Washington have the pleasure of having in Washington, D.C., how does all that history and the things in which we deal with now resonate in a way as you're preparing, in your case, Rebecca, to open, and Rich, in your case, to continue on with the legacy of what Dr. King stood for, and continuously showing with the public some of the things that are important based on what's happening in today's world? I know that's a long question, but I am very, because I saw some things, Rich, yesterday that were present day, the moment you walk in the library, and then of course things tied to the King history. And then with Planet Word, let's just face it, there are some words that we've heard this year in the last few years that we wish we could erase, and things in which we could change. But these things are profound, and they're really changing the way the globe looks at the United States and the way we view ourselves and the things we're learning about ourselves. So whoever wants to start off with an answer, Rebecca, you're touching your glasses, so I'm going to default to you.
I'm muted, says Richard. So I think there's a couple of things for us. Yes, the legacy of the building. The building was the first co-ed public high school in Washington. It was all white. Schools were segregated. So the changing role of institutions like ours in the community is something that we are very aware of and pay attention to. It also was a homeless shelter at one point, serving a different marginalized community. And that is not a legacy we're shying away from. That's not a population we're going to turn away. That's, we're partnering with Street Sense to bring programs with people experiencing homelessness into the museum. We're about tearing barriers down, not making them. And museums can be really intimidating, right? Especially like great big marble ones with columns and long staircases in front. And, we venerate them here in town, and they're very important. But to truly be welcoming, you can't just say, hey, we're free, y'all come. That's all we need to do to make it feel like an institution that's for everybody. And then linguistically, and this is really important, we are not going to tell you how to use language. We are not here to tell you where to put your semicolon or that your slang is not proper English. In fact, there is no such thing as proper English. It doesn't exist. We are descriptive, not prescriptive. The great thing about the English, the reason all of us word nerds want to work in a museum like this or a library like Rich's, is that it's a language you can innovate with and play with and create new ways of using all the time. And everybody's voice is equally valid. And choose your words incredibly wisely. If you have the power to use the language however you want, then you better take that power seriously. And so you talked about the context of an election year when people are, using words to persuade each other of things and scare each other and rally each other. And that is absolutely what Planet Word is about. That there's a reason it's in the nation's capital. There's a reason that the final experience in the museum is a recording booth to tell your own story of how words have changed your life. This is not a admire stuff from afar kind of a place.
Very awesome answer. Rich, you have to unmute yourself, my friend.
I've been unmuted. Thank you for whoever did that for me. Real quickly, and Rebecca, I could listen to you talk all day. I think that the sentiment that you describe about Planet Word is also something that I would use to describe the MLK Library. But maybe I'll just explain a couple of things. During the design phase for the modernization of the library, one of the things that caught me by surprise was, we'd be going out to different communities in all 8 wards of the city, and so many people would say, the one thing that we would love for you to do, it wasn't improve the ventilation system, it wasn't buy more books, it wasn't do this, that, or the other. It was, can you make the building more of can you do a better job of memorializing Dr. King? There was a sense that we had just more or less put his name on the building, installed the mural in the Great Hall, but sort of programmatically, his spirit wasn't really captured in the work of the library. And that's one thing that we have been really working hard on for the past year. And Elliot, you saw some of that in terms of the artwork that's going to be in the building. We've been gifted about a dozen paintings by Alma Thomas, the renowned abstract expressionist, who also taught in local DC public schools for 30 years. We are using that entire building as basically as a lesson plan for racial justice and social justice. Very recently, we partnered with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to preserve a lot of the protest signs that were at Black Lives Matter Plaza not long after George Floyd's murder. And we are really doubling down in every aspect of what we do, not just our local history department, our People's Archive, but in our children's services, in our cafe. We are looking at everything that we do through the lens of equity and racial justice specifically. And we think that that's really important for, as you mentioned before, Elliot, the first building and one of the first monuments in the country named after Dr. King in a city that is sort of showered in monuments named after white people, many of whom were owners of enslaved individuals. So it really is our duty to honor Dr. King in a very innovative and I think sort of 21st century fashion.
Thanks for sharing that, Rich. I don't know if you know this, but I lived in Atlanta for 10 years and sold the city at the Atlanta Convention Bureau, and had the opportunity to interface with the King family regularly, as you know, of the history there. And I will tell you that from what we saw and as in our initial walkthrough, you have done a magnificent job with that legacy. I like the fact that when you walk in with the, I don't know how you describe them, but the buttons that were done by the school kids that not only dealt with issues of different times from racial equality to women's rights, but also issues of today. And that is in real time as you literally walk into the space, and then you are honoring him throughout the building with the mural that was restored in the Great Hall as you walk in. I'm sure that's not the name of the hall, but that's what I'll call it because that's
it is a great hall. It is a great hall. Yeah.
Perfect word. So, as I think about all that we are dealing with as an industry, who we have on the call would be members. We've got quite a few members of Destination DC. I've seen some of the comments about AV and exhibits and things of that nature. We're all striving for that day, whereas we're able to get back to doing what we do best, which is promoting our city, bringing events to the city, celebrating opportunities for people to enjoy all the aspects of Washington, but also put on unique events. And one of the things that we pride ourselves on is the fact that we have so many unique venues in Washington. So as you look at your audience, I would imagine you'd both say that it's pretty broad in terms of someone who wants to do a wedding or a bar mitzvah, or someone who wants to come in and read a book and just escape. Describe from both of your perspectives who your audience is and what you envision the use of both spaces to be for the audience.
Sure. Rebecca, maybe, do you want to go first?
Well, Richard, you go first.
Yeah.
All right. I'm talking already. May as well keep on talking. So, I mean, look, ultimately, we profess to be sort of the people's university, right? A place where anybody can come in and get a leg up that has no, without regard to their economic standing, the level of education that they've got. We're there to help you, whether it's, start a business, put together a resume, figure out what to do with your kids on a Saturday afternoon, or just feel the dignity of being in a phenomenal publicly funded space. More broadly, the building will become, I think, a destination for people who are visiting from around the country or across the region. One of the things that we never sold that building as is a Mies van der Rohe building. So, just probably one of the 2 or 3 most important architects of the 20th century. This is Mies's only building in Washington, D.C. It is his only library in the world. And so I think that we haven't sold that building the way we ought to. And just the juxtaposition of these two just monumental figures of the 20th century, Dr. King from the spiritual side and Mies from the sort of the architectural side, it's a profoundly important building that has never been given justice for a whole lot of reasons. And I think people who are looking for a real meaningful experience in DC that is not a hotel or not necessarily attached to maybe one of the museums on the mall could frankly look at the MLK Library or Planet Word as something so incredibly unique that there's nothing like it anywhere else really in the country. So I'm excited to greet those folks who are really looking for something, a meaningful venue for whatever it is that they're coming to do there.
So Rich, if we host obviously the American Library Association and they want to bring a reception for 2,000 people inside, outside, the answer is yes, they can use the library for that?
Absolutely.
If we have someone who wants to do a bar mitzvah and they want to have it at the library, the answer is yes to that?
Yes, we're all about yes.
What do you say no to? I'm sure, I know it's too early, but do you have that? We absolutely will not do this type of event.
Right. Well, I mean, we have to remember that we are a publicly funded building, so we don't do anything related to campaigning or electioneering. Certainly we would never rent out to a group or an individual that conflicts with DC's values or our values. And so, there is a vetting process to make sure that that all private events are something that we would not be ashamed to share widely. But, by and large, if you're coming there to celebrate a milestone, or if there's a conference that's coming to town, whether it's librarians or, medical device manufacturers, and they want an important space in which to do a function, we absolutely want to host them at MLK.
Okay. And any restrictions on caterers at this point? Or
we will be announcing an exclusive partnership with Cafe Caterer. But there will be exceptions. I know dietary exceptions could be one of them, and there'll be, we want to be as flexible, especially early on, as possible. But right now we're looking at a more or less exclusive catering relationship.
Fair enough, and I agree with the comment from Gwen. The building has always been beautiful, so
awesome.
It's just even nicer now. So Rebecca, same question to you, my friend.
Yeah, so there's a couple of audiences that we hope will come. I mean, of course, we welcome everybody. We are very wary, very aware, and don't want to compete with the National Children's Museum that reopened in the Reagan building down the street. We are not a children's museum. Children, of course, are welcome and will love it, but we're not targeting ourselves as a children's museum. First of all, you have a different experience if you're a fluent reader than you do if you're not a fluent reader in the museum. So families, word nerds, which we have heard from all of them. I tell you, every English major in Washington has let us know that they've been waiting for this museum to open. But the other audience that I'm really interested in cultivating is local creative practitioners. So we do have an auditorium, we have 2 classrooms. I'm gonna move aside so you can see in my Zoom background there, the levels with the windows are the exhibit levels, but that top floor under the mansard roof is an event space. And so we have lots of space for programming, for meetings, for performances, and there's no point in me as the curator of programming to create novel writing workshops and poetry slams and songwriting classes that all exist here in town. And people are doing it really, really well. So it's my goal instead to partner with all those creatives, bring them into the building, give them space and time and promotion, you know, raise all boats in the word-based creative community, and ideally create a nice little hub of cross-pollination of people doing creative work. You know, we all know because we're local, but non-federal DC is a really interesting creative place. And we really want to be a place where that can thrive when that's a thing again. We also will, of course, welcome weddings and bar mitzvahs and meetings of all stripes. We do have a catering agreement with 3 different local caterers. If they don't serve someone's needs because, for instance, you're celebrating Dia de los Muertos and you specifically want a Mexican-American caterer or something like that, we can work through those catering partners to subcontract that out. But we are also in the business of, yes, we want to be able to make this all as smooth as possible. We will have a restaurant opening in the museum, not for opening next week, it'll be next year. And our partner there is Immigrant Foods. So they have a storefront between Lafayette Square and GW, like 19th in Pennsylvania, I want to say. And they're going to be opening a cafe in the museum next spring.
Excellent, excellent. So for both of you, and I'll start with you, Rebecca, we all know that because you are a museum and you have a specific role in which you're trying to fulfill, when someone is looking to do an event in your space, it's going to be extremely important that you have a person that works in your team, an event coordinator or someone that our members can reach out to. Rebecca, have you already or will you hire that person? And if so, when do you anticipate your space will be available for rent?
So right now that person is me. Although my title is curator of programming, what I'm actually responsible for is programming, education, community partnerships, visitor services, volunteers, and outreach. So that person is me. We will, as we get to a point where we're having more events, hire an event manager, but that's going to be based on, you know, demand and time and speed. So I absolutely, I'll put my email in the chat. Our spaces are ready now. You know, if you've, based on COVID restrictions and all the gathering limitations we all have, feel like you could have an event tomorrow, I'd be delighted to accommodate you. So I'm going to put my contact information in the chat right now.
All right, Rebecca, I'm warning you. You're going to have to get that on board.
Telling you, I'm in the business of yes.
Once our industry is back on track, this is going to be a hot
commodity. Well, I see Danny on this call here. I'm counting on her to help me out too.
Yes, I've seen her. I've seen that they're responding to, which is good. So, Rich, in your case, are you going to have said person in place, and how early can someone have an event in the library?
Yeah, we've got a director of partnerships and exhibitions and revenue generation. I just mangled her title, but Linnea Hegarty is on this program, and she right now is overseeing all of that, meeting with potential users of the space. We will be hiring an events person in the coming year. Insofar as when we are going to be ready for programming and for renting, it's certainly not today or tomorrow, but I'm hoping that maybe by the beginning of next year, depending on where we are in terms of the phased reopening for the city,
Right.
definitely next year at some point, but I just don't quite know how soon.
Yeah, and it's really not technically a fair question because you can do but so much right now because of COVID. But I think it's important that the audience know that when the time is right, there is a person that they will be able to reach out to. And I can assure you, because you're the two hottest new venues in the city, if we're doing our job well, which is attracting people to the city and people reaching out to us for events, then I can guarantee you that those leads will be coming in. So Rebecca.
I'm ready. Also, I got to tell you, it's so nice to work in a building where events have been thought through from the very beginning. I used to work at the Smithsonian, right? And it was like, just put the tables around the elephant, it'll be fine. But here we've got catering kitchens on every floor. Right now I am sitting just to have a quiet space to participate in this in the room that is the bride's dressing room. You know, everything has been thought through to make events as smooth and convenient as possible.
Excellent, excellent. How about the amazing park across the street from you that is finally being renovated? What are your thoughts in terms of dual functionality, wedding?
Yeah, I can't wait to activate that park. I mean, I think it's going to be blocked off for a while. Originally, we thought that they were going to block it off in sections as they renovated it, but it seems to be entirely fenced off. But, you know, people aren't gathering in large numbers yet anyway, so maybe the timing will work for us that we'll have this beautifully renovated public square as our front yard. And we are, you know, very collaborative with the bid and the various partners around the square, the Hamilton Hotel and the Eaton Hotel and the Washington Post. We're all friends. So we look forward to activating that space in a way that it hasn't been before.
Excellent, excellent. That's awesome to hear. And Rich, in your case, you're also surrounded by some amazing hotels with limited meeting space, but probably will be looking at you and us and saying, hey, what if we use 6 meeting rooms in the Mlk Library and everybody stay in our hotel and they have their meetings at the library? Is there an opportunity to have that type of discussion as well?
Yeah, I didn't spend a lot of time talking about it, Elliot, but adjacent to our 300-seat auditorium, we've got that sort of 6-room conference center, and each of those rooms can accommodate maybe 40 to 60 people, you know, sort of auditorium style. So there's a lot of flexible space, and there's also, frankly, a lot of space surrounding the auditorium and then other rooms throughout the building. So, you know, once things are in some way, shape, or form coming back to normal, we'll be able to get, you know, many hundreds of people into that building at any one time.
Excellent, because I can assure you that those hotels surrounding you will be reaching out to us from the Reyes and the Monaco, and the list goes on, and figuring out how can they use that space. And of course, we have a program that our convention sales department has, that whereas we identify space within relatively close proximity to the convention center. And I say relatively for both of you because you're both relatively close, that we'll probably want to have dialogue with you all about as well. So I've seen questions about filming and being able to do some filming in each of your spaces. I've seen some of them being answered. Anything you all would like to add in terms of the opportunity to do filming in both venues?
We're eager to welcome folks. The only limitations we have is we are historically protected interior as well as exterior, which is pretty rare. So we've got some limitations on, you can't, you know, clip a light to the wall, things like that. And so the load in, load out has some requirements on it in terms of film crews, but we'd be happy to work with anybody.
Yeah, it's similar to the library, not too many restrictions. It might be easier actually to do some filming while the library is largely empty. It can be a little bit more challenging when we are open for business and making sure people have signed the appropriate waivers if they're going to be caught in the film itself. And, you know, one of the things, and I think Rebecca mentioned it, we're really proud of the fact that we've created the event space in a way that is not terribly disruptive to public services. When I worked at the New York Public Library, people were really inspired by the wedding that Sarah Jessica Parker had at the New York Public Library on that, what the hell was that name? What's that show called?
Sex in the City.
Sex in the City,
Oh,
right.
I know the name, Rich. Come on, Sex and the City.
Hey, I just read books. Anyway, events at the New York Public Library, and I think the way, Rebecca, you described it, you know, tables around the elephants, it was more or less the same thing, but now having sort of dedicated space up on the 5th floor, we can do tons of stuff on the 4th and 5th floor. And if you're coming in to get on a computer or visit the children's room, you'd be none the wiser, which is exactly how we wanted it to be.
Excellent. And I think one key thing that is really good for us, and I know, Rebecca, you have history with the Smithsonian. We love / don't love working with national, federal organizations for doing events and activities. I assume with both of you, and I know that there's city involvement with both, that there's a lot of flexibility within the guidelines of, you know, National Historic, all the things you referenced earlier in which you can do. So in essence, our members can bring you ideas, and it's not the same process as going through the federal government or anything else to see whether or not you can make it happen. Is that fair to say?
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, that's good to know. So there are a lot of questions that are coming in, and we've got about 9 minutes left. There's a question about non-native speakers of, non-native English speakers and international visitors. Should have read it before I asked.
I think it was directed to me. So,
marketing, right.
Planet Word is in English. It is an English language museum. It is not a museum of global languages. I will say there is a very, very cool gallery, which is our Great Hall, that has this massive LED globe in it. And around that are representations of about 31 different languages. And you get a little lesson in that language. So if you walk by, you know, the Pacific on the globe, the iPad stand in front of that might pop up and say, hey, I'm a native Hawaiian speaker. Do you want to learn something about Hawaiian? You'll never see two consonants next to each other in Hawaiian, something like that. You get a little linguistics lesson. So there is one experience where we explore languages other than English. But in terms of sort of inviting speakers of other languages and how they can enjoy the experience, we can certainly offer any sort of translation guide that can go through with you. But the experience is voice activated. It's not, it doesn't lend itself to your sort of traditional docent guiding you through on a guided tour the way more traditional museums are. You really do need to participate. But that said, participate all you want in whatever accent you have and whatever you know, way you want to be there. And in fact, one of the final experiences is this very cool data visualization where you type how many languages you speak or sign at the end of the experience. And as we go forward, you can see this artwork that's based from the data points of how many different languages are spoken in the museum right that second for the past week and since opening. So we want to encourage people to bring their language traditions to us and experience that any way they can.
Excellent. And Rich, in your case, is there anything you'd like to add in regards to international audience potentially coming into the space?
Yeah, not a whole lot. You know, we're participants, very, very faithful participants to the city's language access program. So, you know, most of our most important material is translated into a bunch of languages. Of course, we've got books in languages other than English, but, you know, we're hoping that the experience to the library sort of defies languages, you know, especially for international visitors. You're going to be there to just love being in the space. And whether that means just hooking up your laptop and getting a coffee, or just perusing the stacks and just looking at what we have to offer. I think a lot of that really is, it goes beyond speaking any one language. I mean, I've visited libraries all over the world having no idea the language, the native language, but still having just a phenomenal time.
Excellent, excellent. I will tell you, we had a a tour guide yesterday, your board chair, Gregory McCarthy, who was my former board chair, we referenced to him the fact that as you guys have so many amazing services, it'd be great if we could also check the box with global entry as being one of the options in the space for services being offered. And for those to be able to either sign up or get the interview to get global entry. So we want to throw that out there to you. And we have access to people that perhaps can help you if you.
That's a great challenge. Yeah, we'd love to follow up on that, Elliot.
Absolutely, absolutely. We've built some great relationships with them. So I see that Claire has shown up, so that means we're running out of time. So here's an opportunity for one-word answers from each of you if you can, or one or two. So starting with Rebecca, what's your favorite book?
That's like asking me to choose my favorite child. Elliot, you don't do that to word people.
Come on. All right, favorite subject in a book. How's that?
All right, the book I reread all the time is Persuasion by Jane Austen. Fight me, it's the best Jane Austen.
All right, Rich?
No joke, it's Ulysses by James Joyce, the master wordsmith. I've read that book a few times. I talk about it all the time. It's a never-ending treat for me.
Oh, awesome. So no Amelia Bedelia, eh? All right. Favorite word, Rich?
That's hard. Maybe Weltschmerz.
All right, we'll have to Google that. Rebecca?
Petrichor. It's the smell of wet stone. And it's specific. And you all know exactly what I mean when I say it.
All right. What is a leadership lesson that you will take away from the time of opening a new venue, and you can also add during a pandemic? What's the leadership lesson?
Find smart people and let them do what they do well.
All right, Rich?
I'd say show humility and lead collaboratively.
Wow, I like that. So. Excellent. So with that, I had others, but I think we're running out of time. So I'm going to say to both of you, thank you very much for your time. We're excited about what you're bringing to Washington, D.C. We're excited that we'll include it on, it's already included on washington.org. And we'll make sure that we continue to focus on it from a global perspective so that when we're ready to welcome guests from around the world, they'll not only come for all the reasons in which we've been promoting, but they'll also include you all as a part of their trip. So thank you both for your time. We're excited about your projects, and I'll turn it back over to Claire.
Thank you, Elliot. Thank you, Rich and Rebecca. And Destination DC members, you do not disappoint. This chat is on fire. Thank you so much for your participation. Emily's going to pull up a couple of slides. We have just the information about how you can visit these places. So the Martin Luther King Library, all libraries are open Monday through Friday, 11 to 2 and 3 to 7. And they're closed for cleaning in the middle of the day. And family learning is daily at 4 p.m. on YouTube. That's a fun thing for all you parents at home. And then there are some events that happen all the time with the libraries. And this one in particular caught our attention, and we wanted to draw your attention to it. I Too Sing for America, an evening of storytelling celebrating democracy. And this has been produced in partnership with Story District, which is a really cool storytelling organization. So in the theme of lessons, leaderships, and words, oh, Emily, hey. I would encourage you to explore that in the library. And then next, how do we visit Planet Word? Rebecca has let us know that there are timed admission tickets right now. Those just became available, and so you can reserve your time in the future. The first week is already grabbed up, but there is plenty of room for you to come by later. And they also have some neat events going on, and this one caught our eyes about educator workshop. So thanks for all of that. I also want to make sure to say hello to Linnea Haggerty, who is rapidly answering all these questions in the chat for the DC Public Libraries. And she is running strategic partnerships and events and working with Rich on that. So thanks to Linnea, and we'll include her email as well in this follow-up so that you can get the event and visitation answers that you're looking for. We talked about upcoming member events. Our trivia next week, Wednesday. Come and join us. It's crazy fun and great prizes. And then our Thanksgiving conversation. And we sort of teased on some of that today. Rebecca and Rich, you make me really grateful for Washington, D.C. and your institutions that celebrate our people and our history and our words. And we're going to continue to celebrate that next month too. So with that, thank you all for your membership. Thank you all for your time today. We're delighted to see you, and we'll see you again soon.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Claire and team.